Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening. You're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. The Consumer Protection implements a campaign to stabilize prices of commodities and services in the Governorate of North Batna. Russia denies Western claims of a military incursion in Ukraine as the NATO calls on Ukrainian parliament to put the country on a path to joining US-led Western military alliance. And the United Nations says that 3 million Syrian refugees will have registered in neighboring countries. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The Department of Consumer Protection in the Governorate of North Batna implemented a campaign to stabilize prices of commodities and services. This came in cooperation with Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, OCCI, big companies and commercial complexes. The campaign aimed to spread awareness in this field and prevent the manipulation in commodities and goods prices. The campaign came after a series of meetings between OCCI and Public Authority for Consumer Protection. Activities of the youth program concluded in the Wilaya of Nizwa in the Governorate of Dakhliya. It was supervised by the Ministry of Sports Affairs. It witnessed a participation from around 4,000 youth of the Governorate of Dakhliya. It included cultural, artistic, scientific and social activities that contributed in enhancing capabilities and skills of the youth. The accompanying exhibition focused on youth innovation and artistic portraits in addition to handicrafts. To enhance mutual understanding among civilization and to encourage the spirit of tolerance, the 6th Global Forum for Alliance of Civilization was launched in the city of Bali in Indonesia. The first day of the forum discussed a number of topics regarding positive aspects of cultural, religious, racial and language variations, as well as the role of culture and social media means in developing, in addition to understanding members of the society and world nations. The Sultan's delegation in the forum was headed by His Excellency Habib bin Mohammed Al-Riyami, Secretary General of Sultan Qaboos Higher Center for Culture and Sciences. Still to come in our news bulletin. In the midst of a historic drought, Los Angeles is increasing efforts to go after people who waste water.
من هنا تبدأ أسطر الحكاية. تقاليدها راسخة كالجبال. أصالتها مضرب مثل في كل مكان. بساطتها ليس لها مثيل. لا حدود لكرمها. حاضرها مشرق متجدد. مهرجان صلالة السياحي 2014 من 30 من يوليو إلى 6 من سبتمبر.
Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. For the international world, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has ridiculed Western claims of a Russian military incursion in Ukraine. Lavrov says in Moscow he is hearing such speculation not for the first time, and he has never been presented any factual evidence suggesting that satellite images of Russian military convoys might have been taken from computer games. The minister argues that nervous accusations are being aired because the pro-Russian separatists have made military advances. NATO General Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said today that Russian forces are engaged in direct military operations inside Ukraine in a blatant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He also said NATO would fully respect any decision by the Ukrainian parliament to put the country on a path to joining the US-led Western military alliance. Rasmussen told reporters after NATO ambassadors held an emergency meeting with their Ukrainian counterpart at Kyiv requested that despite Moscow's hollow denials, it is now clear that Russian troops and equipment have illegally crossed the border into eastern and southeastern Ukraine. President Barack Obama said the United States has not yet developed a strategy for confronting IS in Syria. This is what he said.
Good afternoon, everybody. In Iraq, our dedicated pilots and crews continue to carry out the targeted strikes that I authorized to protect Americans there and to address the humanitarian situation on the ground. As Commander-in-Chief, I will always do what is necessary to protect the American people and defend against evolving threats to our homeland. Because of our strikes, the terrorists of ISIL are losing arms and equipment. In some areas, Iraqi government and Kurdish forces have begun to push them back, and we continue to be proud and grateful to our extraordinary personnel serving in this mission.
Only the scattered voices of Kurdish fighters break the silence in the Iraqi village of Wadi Osaj, where the mud and cement block houses stand empty and locked after residents fled. Here's a report.
The villagers here are long gone. The only signs of life are vehicles belonging to the Kurdish Peshmerga forces. They've turned Wadi Osaj, north of Baghdad, into a base for fighting Islamic State militants.
The Islamic State controlled the territory, but we managed to take it back. And we will not go home until all our regions have been reclaimed. We need to make these territories part of the Kurdistan region.
For 2 months, Kurdish fighters have been deployed beyond the borders of the autonomous region of Kurdistan. Their objective, to help the forces of the central government in Baghdad, but also to satisfy historic land claims.
This is a Kurdish land. When Saddam Hussein was in power, he brought Arabs in. That's why people think that this is an Arab region. But now the Islamic State scares those people away.
The villagers fled in early August, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. The majority gathered in a small village called Naudaman, about 7 kilometers away, among them Ali and his family. The father of 4 anxiously waits to be able to return home.
I didn't want to live under the authority of people who do me wrong, cause tragedies, make us flee, and live in the heat, thirsty and hungry.
Although the village was seized by Kurdish forces, Ali and other residents have not yet been allowed to return. Jihadists are still present in neighboring Jalaula, but the Peshmerga are fighting for that city too, another gain they hope to integrate into Kurdistan.
The United Nations said that 3 million Syrian refugees will have registered in neighboring countries as of today, but many remain trapped by the advance of militants or are having difficulty in reaching open border crossings. The record figure is 1 million refugees more than a year ago, while further 6.5 million are displaced with Syrian, meaning that almost half of all Syrians have now been forced to abandon their homes and flee for their lives. Antonio Guterres, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, said in a statement that the Syrian crisis has become the biggest humanitarian emergency of our era. Yet the world is failing to meet the needs of refugees and the countries hosting them. Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu kept key members of Turkey's economic management team in place and named Ankara's point man on Europe as foreign minister in the new cabinet today. Erdogan was sworn in as president yesterday. He is likely to retain influence over the new team with his former aide Yalcin Erdogan and Numan Kurtulmaz, the deputy chairman of the ruling AK party and another close ally, both named as deputy prime ministers. The new government takes office at a challenging time for Turkey with economic growth, one of the pillars of which the popularity of the AK party is based, showing and the map of the Middle East being rapidly redrawn around it. Outgoing EU Affairs Minister and career diplomat Mevlut Kavusoglu becomes foreign minister, replacing Davutoglu, suggesting that reinvigorating Turkey's stalled European Union membership negotiations could be a priority. Volkan Bozkır, the former head of Parliament's Foreign Relations Commission, who has held several diplomatic posts in Europe, takes over as EU minister. Libyan Prime Minister Abdullah al-Athini and his cabinet resigned yesterday to pave the way to forming a new government after parliamentary elections in June. The North African oil producer is at risk of splitting or even sliding into civil war after rival groups set up an alternative parliament this week. The competing parliaments and fighting among former rebels have created uncertainty and chaos in Libya. The House of Representatives and government have moved to Tobruk in the Far East to escape a month of street fighting in the capital, Tripoli. In the midst of a historic drought, Los Angeles is increasing efforts to go after people who waste water. 5 water conservation cops drive around the city every day, educating homeowners about the drought. More details in the following report.
Enrique Silva is a man on a mission. He drives around Los Angeles every day looking for people wasting water in the middle of a drought.
We will look for people irrigating on the wrong day. Especially the one thing we're looking for is water running in the street, runoff. And it could be for any different reason. It could be for usually from irrigation being on too long.
There is water on the pavement and this lawn is still wet. No doubt the owner of this home is breaking the law.
So this is the,
Silva takes a few pictures which he will later send along with a warning letter. The fine can reach $100, but this time around there will be none of that.
We're more in an educational phase. We feel that with people, they understand that we're in a drought, and we feel that people, if they know the rules, they'll comply with them. Many people that are watering on the wrong days might not realize that they're only allowed to water 3 times a week. And so by sending them a letter, we let them know, what the rules are and what the potential fines are if they don't comply.
California is suffering one of the worst droughts in the history of the state. And going after those who waste the precious resource can only go so far. Some researchers say it's time to hit where it hurts the most, people's wallets.
Maybe in years where there's a lot of water, the water can be less expensive, but in years that are becoming more normal where there's less water, that water is very expensive because watering a lawn is not a necessity for human well-being.
I have 2 houses that I see them every day.
Every day watering? Okay, we'll go take a look.
While awaiting more significant measures, Silva can count on the help of neighbors ready to spot wasteful practices and warn the authorities.
When I see them every day, that they're still there watering their lawn after, they were told they, just conserve water and they don't. So maybe they should just give them a little notice.
This water waster will get away with just a warning this time around. But if the next months don't produce more precipitation, fines will be implemented.
Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Cloudy skies will prevail over the coastal areas of the Governorate of Dhofar and nearby mountains with chances of intermittent drizzle. Rest of the Sultanate will have clear to partly cloudy skies with chances of scattered rain over parts of the Hajar Mountains. Winds will be southerly to southwesterly to moderate to active along the coast of Arabian Sea, while it will be southeasterly to easterly light to moderate over the rest of the Sultanate. Seas along the coastal areas of Arabian Sea will be rough, with a maximum wave height of 3.5 meters, and along the rest of the coast it will be slight to moderate, with a maximum wave height of 1.5 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Consumer Protection implements a campaign to stabilize prices of commodities and services in the Governorate of North Batna. Russia denies Western claims of a military incursion in Ukraine as the NATO calls on Ukrainian parliament to put the country on a path to joining the US-led Western military alliance. And the United Nations has said that 3 million Syrian refugees will have registered in neighboring countries. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the studio and the newsroom, it's good night.